What if LeBron James never played for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Miami Heat, or the Los Angeles Lakers? What if he played for the Cleveland Presidents, the Orlando Heat, and the Los Angeles Gems? And what if I told you this alternate universe actually almost happened? I uncovered the weirdest team names in pro sports history and found some long-lost ones that didn't make it to the modern era. Ironically, many of these forgotten team names actually make more sense than the real names we use today. For example, the Los Angeles Lakers. Do you know how many natural lakes there are in Los Angeles? Next to none, because nothing in LA is natural. The Lakers were born in 1946 as the Detroit Gems. Then in 1947, the franchise moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where they became the Lakers because of the state's nickname, Land of 10,000 Lakes. That's a lot more than none. The Gems would have made a lot more sense for a city as bougie as LA. I guess they saw something in the Laker brand that was bigger than logic? But what if I told you I found 9 other team names in pro sports history that are even weirder than the Lakers? Don't believe me? Just watch. You don't even have to go far for the 9th weirdest team name because it's also in Los Angeles. The Dodgers were first born in 1896 in Brooklyn, New York, where they were first called the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers. Back then, they played at Eastern Park, where heavy construction of electric trolley tracks in front of the stadium caused fans to dodge the trolleys to reach the park. Those fans became known as Trolley Dodgers, and their team eventually became the Dodgers. Obviously, the Dodgers are no longer in Brooklyn. They're in LA, where the only thing you need to dodge is traffic, smog, celebrities, paparazzi. You know what? Maybe the name still does make sense. But you know what's even weirder than calling your team something outdated and geographically inaccurate? Naming your team after a pair of pants. I'm serious. You could hate your favorite team's name, but in all likelihood, they are not named after pants. That is, unless you're a Knicks fan. The New York Knicks can trace the roots of their name to the 1600s, when Dutch settlers were first arriving to the New World. These settlers wore pants that rolled up just below the knee. Nowadays, we call those Mike McDaniel pants. But back then, they were known as knickerbockers, or knickers. Cut to a couple centuries later, when Washington Irving, famous writer of his day, and apparently the inventor of the horizontal sideburn, turned the word knickerbocker into must-use slang. Kind of like what Tom Holland did with Riz.
I have no Riz whatsoever. I have limited Riz.
Yeah, you do, you liar. Anyway, in 1809, Washington Irving wrote a satiric book entitled A History of New York from the Beginning of the World to the End of the Dutch Dynasty. Sounds hilarious, right? But here's the kicker. Irving didn't publish the book under his real name because he's got too much Riz for that. He used the pseudonym Diedrich Knickerbocker. From then on, the word Knickerbocker became forever linked to New York, most notably through this beloved and kinda creepy Father Knickerbocker character. Father Knickerbocker had a powerful hold over the city and its citizens, thanks to his next-level drip, a cotton wig, 3-cornered hat, buckled shoes, and above all, his knickered pants. Then Father Knickerbocker took over New York sports. In 1845, the first organized baseball team in sports history came to Manhattan, who was called the New York Knickerbockers, aka the Knickerbocker 9. Then, 100 years later, the Basketball Association of America, the NBA before the NBA, granted a charter franchise to New York in the summer of 1946. Knickerbockers was eventually shortened to the Knicks, and the rest is history. Thank goodness this named after pants trend didn't continue, or today we might be talking about the Detroit Dockers, the Louisville Levi's, or the Houston Hammer Pants. Actually, the Houston Hammer Pants sounds pretty sick. Someone should get on that. Maybe I'm being a little hard on the Knicks. After all, they only had the 8th weirdest team name of all time, because the 7th, 6th, and 5th weirdest team names in pro sports history are all teams named after socks. The Red Sox, the White Sox, and the Cincinnati Reds. 3 Major League Baseball teams named after a total of 2 sock colors. Could these franchises be any less creative? The Red Sox got their name when team owner John Taylor decided to order red socks for his team's uniforms in 1908. Then, to appease headline writers who needed short team names for their newspaper headlines, he added a typo, and the rest is history. The same thing accidentally happened in Chicago in 1904, when a distracted scorekeeper wrote their name as White Sox on top of a scorecard, which was later seen by the press. The catchier name stuck, and the White Sox became another typo team. The folks in the Cincinnati baseball scene, meanwhile, also had a clothing that covers your foot fetish, but they really shook things up by kicking off their socks and just going by the Reds in 1881. But in the 1950s, the Reds became a problem during the communist paranoia of the McCarthy era, also known as the Red Scare. Not wanting to be associated with communism, the Reds were forced to change their names to the Redlegs. Yes, because it's way less embarrassing to be named after what happens when you don't put on sunscreen at the beach and get sunburned. Luckily, in 1959, the name of the Cincinnati Reds was restored in all its glorious weirdness. This brings us to the fourth weirdest team name ever, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns weren't named after socks or colors of socks or after anything that anyone in the city of Cleveland could relate to, other than one dude. The Browns showed absolutely no by naming themselves after their first head coach, Paul Brown, in 1946. Times have changed, but the Browns are still named after a coach from 80 years ago. They embraced the color scheme, but for a team that stunk for many years, being called the Browns has also made them the butt of quite a few jokes over the years. You made it to the top 3. If you've got any scalp left, enjoy our biggest head scratchers. The third weirdest team name in all of sports is the Utah Jazz. Jazz and Utah do not sound like two things that ever belong in a sentence together, let alone in a basketball team name. The Jazz used to be based in New Orleans, where the jazz music scene is alive and well. But when owner Sam Battistone Jr. moved the team to Salt Lake City in 1979, he decided to keep the name the Jazz, knowing full well it made no sense. He said they held a public contest to come up with a better name, and nobody could, so they stayed the Jazz. Way to throw your whole city under the bus, Battistone. Now it's time for you to meet the prestigious runner-up in our top 10 weirdest team names list. Unfortunately, it's a franchise that's used to being the runner-up, the Buffalo Bills. They've got one of the most diehard, devoted, and suffering fan bases in all of sports. Unfortunately, they also went wide right on their team name. The Buffalo Bills are named after the famous Wild West showman, Buffalo Bill Cody. One issue with that, Buffalo is not in the Wild West. It's in upstate New York. And as was recently pointed out, Buffalo Bill Cody hunted buffalo, which adds an even more disturbing layer to this whole thing.
Wait, so we're naming our mascot after a guy that used to kill our mascot? Technically, yes. Maybe there's a guy that kills dolphins. That makes more sense. That's illegal. So, all right, why can't we just have Bill be the mascot? The Bill guy? Just let him do it. It's already been decided, okay? We're the Buffalo Bills from Buffalo. Our mascot is also a buffalo named Bill. Okay, that clears it up.
That clears it up indeed, but not enough to take the top spot in our weird names list. Because the number one weirdest team name in pro sports history goes to the Orlando Magic. A team name that sounds like it was picked by a 7-year-old girl, because guess what? It was. When Orlando businessman Jim Hewitt and basketball insider Pat Williams announced their intention to bring an NBA team to Orlando, they held a contest in the Orlando Sentinel newspaper for everyday Floridians to help choose the name for the team. It went about as well as you'd expect with Florida people calling the shots. Out of more than 4,000 submitted names, the list was narrowed down to a final 4: the Heat, the Tropics, the Juice, and the Magic. Then, Williams brought his 7-year-old daughter, Karen, to visit him in Orlando. And she told her dad she liked the Magic the best. Because, she's 7. Apparently, the name selection committee also liked the Orlando Magic the best because it would remind people of Walt Disney World and its Magic Kingdom. Another example of brilliant Florida logic. They liked the name because it reminded people of a more fun place to go down the street. For this name to ever make any sense and not feel like the weirdest team name in all of professional sports, it would take a sweeping and miraculous act of, magic. So there you have it, the 10 weirdest team names in professional sports history. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go listen to some Utah Jazz while I dodge trolleys on my way to a Los Angeles lake to swim with Buffalo Bill Cody. And it's all going to feel like magic.